afternoon. Welcome to MEED Live. My name is Richard Thompson, and we have a special broadcast today. We're going to look at smart cities and intelligent cities. In this region, and particularly in this city in Dubai, there is a stated aim of being amongst the most smart or the smartest cities in the world. And allied with the UAE innovation strategy, we're seeing a lot of investment and entrepreneurialism in this sector. So we're going to look at this. We're going to look today at the vision. We're going to look at what has been done so far, but most important, what comes next, the opportunities going forward, what's going to drive intelligent cities and integrated smart networks and smart grids in this market and around the region. I'm joined today by a very, very expert panel. We'll just do some introductions. Carl, if you could tell us a little about who you are and your involvement in intelligent smart cities.
Yeah, great to be here. Carl Talace is the name. I'll look after the strategic partnership area for our innovation group for SAMIA. Headquartered here in Dubai is our operation. We're doing a hell of a lot when it comes to smart city initiatives. In fact, our global innovation center focus on smart cities is actually based here in Dubai.
Okay, so you're with Visa. I'm interested to know, once we go through the initial introductions, why we have Visa in the discussion, and you can prepare yourself for that thought. But if next to me, I have Assem Khalaili. You are with Siemens, one of the world's biggest technology companies. Tell us a little bit, why are you here today?
Well, thanks, Richard, for inviting me today for this important panel, important discussion. As you said, my name is Assem Khalaili. My job in Siemens, I am heading the strategy and business development for power services, but I do also the digitalization advising role. For us, smart cities or intelligent cities, as we like to call it, them today, for Siemens is a big topic. Cities means everything, means energy transmission. We speak about smart grids, we speak about smart energy nowadays. We speak about transportation, we speak about people, we speak about entertainment, we speak about businesses and how you do business, manufacturing, industrialization, all these parts coming in the cities. And Siemens is playing a role in most of these things.
But as a big technology company, your role is, you're about the platform.
Exactly, and this is what comes to when Siemens started to put all this infrastructure together, and with the digitalization revolution now, we get to that we call the platform level, where you have to master these things from the high level of technology, where we call the platform services today, where we want to come and manage the platforms. Yeah.
Okay, well, welcome. Thank you for joining
me. Thank you very much.
Now, on my right-hand side, we have Joanna Truffaut. You are with Ernst & Young, one of the world's great advisory consultancy services.
Thank you.
What's your involvement with smart cities?
We do a lot. We've built about 2 to 3 years ago the Smart City Index in Europe. We do a lot of work around smart cities and smart transformation for cities and the GPS sector, the government and public services sector throughout the region. I cannot tell you names of clients,
of course,
because this is confidential.
But you're providing advice
but
to the government.
We do provide such type of advice in the field of smart and intelligent cities and digital transformation across the region, for very key governments.
I guess. We'll come on to this later on, but the regulatory, as well as the vision side of it, the regulatory side of it, preparing an environment that allows smart cities, so that's pretty crucial. So that's part of where you're providing your role.
Yes, absolutely. There's limited transformation in the government sector and in cities if you don't have a proper regulatory framework that will, I would say, spur innovation, and in parallel protect the citizens with their rights, and as well as protect the businesses when they do business in a city and with the government.
Excellent. Well, welcome. Thank you for joining us.
You.
And last but not least, we have an entrepreneur on the panel, Craig McDonald. You are the founder and CEO of Yalla Parking. So that is an app to help people find parking spaces. And I think, as a representative of the entrepreneur community, that's the key for smart cities going forward. But tell us a little bit about Yala Parking. When were you started, and what stage of development are you at?
Sure. Thanks, Richard. So I'm Craig McDonald. I'm a co-founder and CEO of Yala Parking. Yala Parking is an online platform to help drivers find and reserve parking spaces both ahead of time and on demand. So we are trying to solve for a challenge that we believe that people face on a daily basis, which is wasting time finding parking, and then on a kind of macro scale, trying to help solve environmental issues and congestion issues, because about 30% of each come from inadequate and outdated parking infrastructure. So yeah, we believe that we're contributing it in our own way to a smart city, smart transformation, smart data collection, and then also smart mobility.
Okay, and when did you start business?
Sure. So yeah, we were incorporated in October 2016.
Okay.
So we've been going just over a year now, and it's going well. We're
in Dubai.
In Dubai. We'll shortly be going to Sharjah and then again to Abu Dhabi. So we're expanding UAE wide this year.
Congratulations. Okay, well, I'm
Thank
looking
you.
forward to hearing more about. I'm looking forward to hearing about the experience of an entrepreneur in this area,
Sure.
because I think this is an important part of the conversation. So, welcome to all four of our guests. Carl, I'm going to come to you first. And so, as I mentioned, Visa, you're a payment network system,
Yes.
or a credit card company. But I always associate smart cities with electricity grids, the Siemens might provide it, or with transport, or the government vision. What's Visa's involvement?
So first and foremost, I think when you think of a smart city, you've got to really look at it from the angle of the consumer journey in a city. So we're at the heart and soul of many aspects of a smart city infrastructure in relation to payments and in relation to the digital payment side. So where the ecosystem needs to work together is how do you enable microservices in a smart city, and it's a term that's starting to come up a lot more. And so our role is to help, how do we shape a lot of the consumer payment experiences from a digital angle through that journey for a consumer in a city.
So you touch on pretty much every facet of a city, so whether it's paying your electricity bills or buying in a shop.
So I think the best way to look at it is, let's sort of peel back at what is our current role and what are we actually doing. So in Dubai, we've got an innovation center here, which is actually recently been launched a couple of years ago. But the primary focus now is evolving a lot of the smart city microservices use cases that are here in this region. And so we work very closely with private enterprise. We also work very closely with our top tier merchants and our top tier strategic clients in solving problems. And the way we solve problems is whether it's in relation to maybe a smart parking area, or it's in relation to a merchant solution at the point of sale. There are many touch points that a consumer goes through. So our role is to help work with the ecosystem, and that partner ecosystem are technology partners. So as you look around here, Siemens is obviously a technology partner that's playing a very strong role around, say for example, the IoT space and infrastructure space. There are a lot of other partners that we also work more specifically with to help bring to life some of those experiences. But it still has to go through the journey aspect. And so if you think of, for example, you wake up in the morning and then you obviously want to commute to work or to an event or to a social gathering, and then you maybe want to purchase some things on the way, whether it's a coffee or whether it's some kind of a sandwich. Then you need to go and sort of arrive at that destination. You maybe want to park, you obviously want to commute back home, you maybe want to experience things through the whole area where you obviously want to purchase and interact. We play and we provide, let's just say, access to our network for solutions that will allow you to digitally transact.
So you're coming at this from the private sector point of view. You're integrated as a business, providing services across all these different areas.
Yeah.
If I can turn to Joanna, you advise government. So what do the governments want? So we've heard what the private sector wants. Why do the governments want smart cities?
I don't think there is one universal wish list. It all depends on what the government, and I would say more at a municipality level, when you talk about a smart city, it all depends on what that municipality wants to solve as a problem or as a set of challenges.
But do they tend to look at it as a holistic ecosystem,
Yes.
or do they look at one problem at a time, so it's electricity or transport?
Okay. So if we look at various examples of cities globally, if you take the example of New York City or Beijing, the number one focus on a smart city perspective is security and combating criminality, right? If you go to Beijing today, every single street has a set of cameras, and very recently they've engaged with a startup company that enables a criminal to be identified in a matter of minutes within the city limits. If you take the example of New York City, combating crime has been a very first theme back in the years, and this is why, as an example, they've set up an open data platform whereby citizens or residents of the city could basically log and say, okay, well, there is an incident that just happened, you need to deploy people ASAP.
Okay, from
Sure.
a very macro level, the government wants to, the business wants to do business in a seamless and smooth, integrated way. Government wants to provide a stable, secure environment so that business and society can operate.
So if we take a step back, at a macro level, governments today, they understand that they compete less on borders, but more on connectivity. So it is the government which will provide the highest connectivity and highest level of services and ICT services that will have the most likelihood to attract investors.
Oh, I see. So
right?
It's about competitive advantage then.
It is a very strong competitive advantage.
Yeah.
So again, we come back to the definition of a smart city. If we try to give one, and again, it all depends, and I insist on that, on the problems that you're trying to solve. But in general, a city will want, a smart city will be one that basically provides an environment for people to work better, to live better, to co-create better, and to engage better with the government. Now, that implies a certain set of parameters and criteria. Amongst them, those cities are usually very data-driven. They are operationally efficient. They rely a lot on ICT. And I would say they provide a very strong social inclusion. Now, if we take the example of Dubai, again, one of the big challenge in Dubai is the management, or I would say the usage of energy. As a prime topic, challenge that needs to be solved is how the smart and data can solve that problem. Second topic or theme as a smart city, very typical from the GCC. In the GCC, as we all know, right, the vast majority of people living here are non-citizens, right? So, I think it's 80%, at least as far as I know for Dubai. Expats. There's a lot of micro-transactions in terms of financial transactions. So my maid, every month, she goes to a certain agency to transact and to send her money. She spends a certain amount of money, which is quite significant. Dubai would have actually a tremendous opportunity as a smart city to innovate in the field of microtransactions, to make them smoother, faster, and at a minimal cost.
So a couple of questions from what you've just mentioned, but on that final point, is that the responsibility of the government to make them smoother and faster, or is it the entrepreneurs and the technology companies? And where does
but I believe, let me make one point here before we go to answer your question. The one point is, I believe, when we speak about intelligence or digitization now, it's disruptive change. Let's agree with that. This is technology age which we are crossing now. And when the disruptive change happen in society, the boundaries changes. And this is where I believe the right position to take now, to understand that we cannot scale what will happen in future based on what we learn in past. So in past, we know the role of government, the role of businessmen, the role of SMEs. In future, that role will be changed from my point of view. The way we do business will change. So there's a major shift in the business models will happen, how companies will earn money, how companies will create value to earn money, and what consumers will pay money for will be different.
And what does that change look like? How do you think companies will be in 10 years from now?
I cannot say what companies will be, but we have seen in the B2C era where we speak about internet companies, how some companies in 5 years made to become or to sell for billions of dollars what created of data and what created of social data there. And take examples, Facebook, WhatsApp, or all these companies who made that change. My aim of this point, the future role of governments and citizens and companies is going to evolve to a different things. And that change is going to be exponential. Why exponential? Because the future is now getting very fast changes. So I believe
And what's driving that? Is that technology?
the technology is available, and now the people, by testing the technology and seeing the value this technology can create for them, they start to do it faster and faster and faster. So we know that most of the data in the internet has been accumulated last 2 years. But if we see that in 2020 there will be 50 billion devices connected to internet, that means a massive amount of data. Data storage costed in year 2000, for 1 terabyte you used to pay $17,000. For year 2020 you will pay less than $3. So there's a massive amount of data being published and available for people to use it, and people are smart enough to create value of this data, and that will bring us the new business models, which is going to drive the future. Now,
So what you're saying is that to achieve the smart city vision that Carl and that Joanna just described, we're quite advanced on that journey. We've got the technology and we're accumulating the data. So the driver going forward will be the people that take the data and do something.
And the merger between the government and the institutions and the companies will be much smaller. You will not see the gap you saw before. So governments will focus on now, and I see Dubai is a good example. The government is focusing on building the infrastructure for that. So they want Dubai to be a super class, high class in the infrastructure, where people will feel attracted to use it for their benefit. Now, my benefit can be various things. My benefit as a user, my benefit as a businessman, my benefit as a partner, that will create the value in the future for us. Technology is there and technology is available. The issue how we will deploy the technology to create that value through different channels, SMEs, government institutions, businessmen, companies, manufacturing, all that stuff will be the attractive of the future, and we need data for do that.
And if I can come finally to the SME side. So as Assem has just said, that it's different people are going to be driving the smart city in the future, and the entrepreneurs, I presume the SMEs and will be absolutely key. So what's your experience? Are we now in Dubai at least at the stage where someone like yourself can come along and tap into the data network with your app and it's ready to go, or how easy is that?
Yeah, I mean, I think just on the point that we were previously discussing about what the government's role is, from my point of view, especially, it's to provide a platform to allow people like myself, other entrepreneurs, technology startups, to build different businesses, to experiment and to fail and to challenge what we are doing now, in so that you're not penalized. If you want to create a crazy new idea, you shouldn't be held back from the government about, there shouldn't be legislation to say no. There should be a more, kind of an idea or a culture of saying, go and try it, we'll learn from it, and if we did something wrong, then we'll learn and we'll take it and we'll do something else. So just to touch on the government's kind of role in this whole thing, from my point of view, is to provide that type of platform where people feel a willingness to go and try new things.
And do you think, maybe Joanna, you can answer this, does when you speak to governments, do they understand this, or is their focus isn't on enabling entrepreneurs, their focus is on security or some other aspect, or how much is that dialogue happening?
It's a very difficult balance, obviously, because you're talking about data and you're talking about private data and you're talking about, legislation that's been built for a reason over the last, 20 to 30 years. But as we're saying here, technology is changing, business is changing. So the government needs to be able to almost foresee what's happening and put in place kind of a platform to say, we're there. You could, private businesses, entrepreneurs, whoever it is, even big corporations, go and be the change that we want to benefit from. And I think in Dubai, there is a lot of that going on. You have a lot of government, not grants, but you have a lot of government kind of opportunities to say, right, we're creating, if you take Dubai Future Accelerator, for example, they're creating platforms to say, come to Dubai, try your ideas. There's Hyperloop, there's all of these different kind of people that are willing to come here, set it up, use the government, use the different entities to help learn and help grow. So I think the conversation is beginning to happen, and there's change beginning to happen, but there is definitely, I think, ways to go and improvements to be had.
And do you feel as a small business, as a startup, that your needs are being heard? So I mean, Siemens or Visa, two enormous global entities, presumably you have direct access to government, and so your voices will be quite loud. But from an SME or an entrepreneur, it's probably more difficult. I mean, how do you do that?
It can be difficult. I mean, there is definitely initiatives from the government to go and take your ideas there, but there's hundreds of thousands of ideas getting created every day.
Yeah.
So in order for us to kind of, especially with us even, very early on in the beginning of Yala Parking, there was a kind of thought around, oh, is this treading on toes, or is this potentially going to be something that they look upon badly? And if you look at the US, Europe, our model is happening and our model is helping. It's helping combat traffic. It's helping increase, experience for drivers. It's helping autonomous vehicles gather data about parking. So yeah, I think we can be heard, but there is. It does feel like we're kind of struggling an uphill.
But just to add in this point, this is a very important one. I mean, answering your question and coming to discuss with Greg on this. Yes, of course, the big organization is always working with ecosystems who are a group of SMEs, and we support them. But I believe in, again, coming to the disruptive change of technology which is happening now. The best drivers for this change normally are the SMEs. They can handle the boundaries in much faster and flexible manners. They are able to maneuver compared to big organizations and big establishments, and they are more innovators, and the turnaround time of any idea is much faster, because you do it in one or two few people company, so you are able to test many methods at a faster speed.
And would you say then that we're at a position in the development of smart cities where the technology is fundamentally there, the enabling technology, the data is largely there because we have so much data, so it's largely now about the entrepreneurs or the people who can provide the services, and I guess this is where Visa comes in. You talked about the microservices.
Yeah. So I actually wanted to elaborate further on both Craig and Alison, because one of the most important roles that we play is how do we bridge that divide between those startups and between those solution providers that are coming out and born out of this region, and get them closer to the government area, but also closer to the top tier clients and merchants that are in the market. So we play a very strong role to try and let's look at those proof of concept opportunities. So if we think of the journey aspect, there are many microservices involved. So if I'm going to use the metro, for example, I mean today, I carry an Emirates ID card. So all of us do who live in Dubai, but there should be a benefit towards being able to use those credentials to have a seamless journey through government transport, for example. At the same time, wouldn't it be fantastic to have interconnectedness between cities? So if you think of today the journey, say, from Dubai to Abu Dhabi, what's always on my mind when I drive up there for a meeting is where do I park? And then secondly, where do I get my lunch? And then thirdly, can I have it delivered to me? And then on the way back home, where do I stop to sort of fuel up? So, I mean, there are apps that are there. The government has a business, a government to government and government to consumer platform. For example, the Dubai Now app today. But it'd be great to elevate that using fintechs and using startups with those solutions to enhance that for government to private sector services and providing that to the consumer.
So what needs to be done?
This forum is actually part of that. I think first and foremost is we work as part of a holistic public-private partnership committee to recommend solutions. That's one aspect. But more importantly is, are we actually creating the proof of concepts here, and are we trialing them as live pilots out there? Where we are today in Dubai Internet City, there's some fantastic opportunities to try and leverage some of these opportunities, whether they're IoT related or specifically around smart parking. The need is there.
So your point about having a single platform or a single location for your data. I recently was applying for a visa to travel within the region, and after the application process I had to do the biometric scans, the retina scans and the fingerprinting and things. and it must be about the 10th time I've done the same scans at the same place, which seems like a complete waste of time. They've already got it on the system. I mean, maybe, Joanna, you can comment on this. Why am I having to do that again and again? Is that because there is a lack of a sort of platform to share this information?
So, first of all, if we step back a bit, when we talk about smart cities and data, we're talking about most of the time sensors. There's not one platform for smart cities. This is usually a set of platforms within a certain ecosystem that includes government organizations and obviously SMEs and big businesses. Now, one sensor can, at a minimum, or I would say on average, can generate 1 million to 4 million data points per second. The problem that we're facing is actually an overflow of data.
Okay.
And the problem that we've seen in many cities is not addressing the problem from a citizen perspective, but more from a technology point of view.
So if I can just ask what you mean. So when we have too much data, why is that a problem to me? Does it?
So it becomes a problem when, at the end of the day, the data that is generated is most of the time unstructured.
Right.
You cannot read through it. There's a lot of noise, and basically, you're not able, or you're not structured your thought process at the beginning in a way that that data helps you solve a particular problem. So again, if we step back, is when you set up smart city platforms, first of all, you need to know what is it as a challenge that you want to solve. So, as an example, if I'm a newcomer to Dubai, I want to know where I can get the best quality of life, which neighborhood, as per my lifestyle, as per my family desires. Where can I minimize my commute? Okay? This supposes the fact that that data that sits somewhere on the cloud platform is going to communicate with other clouds. Okay? So the biggest challenge right now is going to be about the ability of a city to interconnect those clouds together to communicate and exchange that data in a meaningful manner.
And is that where Siemens or someone who does the platforms, is that where they come into this?
So the equipment manufacturers, as well as the service providers at an application layer, they need to work together, and there needs to be bridges. Sorry, I'm getting a little bit technical, but let me make it a little bit less technical. Those services, they need to communicate together. They need to speak the same language. But the challenge is sometimes those equipments do not speak the same language, right? So a true connected. So my point is, a true connected city is the one that, for a consumer perspective, is completely, in terms of services, all what happens in the background is transparent to me. So all those clouds talk together seamlessly, and I'm getting a real-time, fully fledged, personalized service throughout the city. And we are not there yet. This is a lot of work. This is a lot of transparency and, I would say, compliance in terms of protocols of handshake between those technologies, basically.
Yeah. I mean, you closed your statement is a very important point, the handshake of technology between things. But if we speak actually about the data and the ability to interface between different protocols or different platforms, the technology is there, the technology is available today, and it's able to speak about open protocols and how we communicate in cloud to cloud or platform to platform. I disagree with one thing with you. There's no stupid data. There's mass of data, there's big data, but the technology today is able to move from mass data to what we call smart data. The artificial intelligence and machine intelligence now is able to filter this data, and this is why I say there's no stupid data. Why? Because this data is able to help our machine to learn. So the artificial intelligence and machine intelligence is built actually in the healthy data, which you get with this mass of information, we say there's nothing
Absolutely.
happening, why I need it? Because you build the model based on that. So you are able to build your model in the normal data that you are able to differentiate any exponential or anything happens for a short time to say this is abnormal, and the abnormality will be easy to detect. So the technology is there. But I agree with you in one important thing, how much today we are intelligent in our day-to-day use. Like we are also the citizens and the normal people in city, how much we use technology in day-to-day compared how much we still trust our frame of references. We still live in our past, our frame of references. So if we see the new generation now, they are more technology oriented and they do more of that platform services compared to my age, where I am still preferring to go with my frame of references, driving the route I know, driving the car I like, eating in the restaurant I like, more than looking what's new now, what's up. I mean, and this is where I believe I bid on the SMEs, because if I see today who are going to the SMEs world, they are more the youngsters, the guys who want freedom, innovation, faster, but we need to avail for them that platform to enable them. Legalization institutions are very crucial in the time being to be flexible, because the notion of digitization, you have to accept it. What smart city for me is in two words: continuity of workflow. Because this is what digitization we do it in. When we did automation in past as industry, we said, guys, I need a continual operation. I don't want to get any disrupt while I'm doing that. Today, for me, bringing digitization to touch the people, I say I have to create a continuity of workflow. If I am a human, I want to do A to Z. I don't want to stop in between every milestone. I want to do seamless. And this is the role of all of us, how to create this journey.
Yes.
What Carl mentioned, the journey. I put myself in that, and then I put the role of everyone, how we are going to achieve it. Technology is there, but we have a workflow in between, has to be granted.
So would you say then we're just at the start of the journey? I mean, this idea of having cities or countries where our data is all on the platform somewhere, and all the systems are connected up, and we can just move from one to the other as we like. Are we far away from that, or are we at that point?
Technologically, you can do today. You can do a seamless logistics movement. You can do that. Yeah. We are speaking today about using, high technology in logistics moving, that you can know where is your shipment from A to B to C to Z till you reach it in hand. The issue, how much of usage we are doing for that, because again, the data, how you know that your data point is active or rich? By number of usage. So if we get to use more of the platforms, this platform will become richer, and this usage will create a new investment and new development of stage. And that's what we have to believe on as citizens to make it happen. So the technology is there, from logistics, transport. This is happening today. If you come to Dubai, you are able to know from Dubai airport, tell where your hotel is, how your journey will look like. You can book your journey. If it is taxi, bus, metro, you can do that. Now you can. Technology is there. Are you doing? That's a different story.
So if I can, before we go into the questions that have been submitted, if I can come to you, Craig. So you are at the entrepreneur end. You're generating data. So Joanna mentioned sensors generating data. What happens then? I mean, do you put that on a platform, or are there regulations that stop you using that data?
No, I mean, essentially what we're trying to do at the minute is collect data for ourselves to make our product better.
Okay,
and
so
to
you're
make our
collecting
service
data
better.
from subscribers or from users?
Yeah, from our users, where they're parking, how much time they're saving, how much money they're spending, how much money they're willing to spend in order to, make their lives easier.
And where does that data go once you've collected it? Do you have it on your internal servers?
Yeah, that's stored on all of our private servers, stored on our databases.
So
and from my point of view, this is a challenge. If I have to speak among everything, I believe legalization will move, everything will move. What the real challenge today is the data storage. Where is the data storage? Because again, we speak about learning from data. I need the mass to learn from it. So we are speak about fleet learning. What does mean fleet learning? If I am putting 100 car in a platform, I'm learning from 100 car samples. If I put 10,000 cars, I learn much faster. So this is where we come to importance of creating platforms where you have a data storage in open wide form. Yes, I know we come time to say I need my data in my entity, in my premises, in the country, but we lose a lot of intelligence by doing that.
But from a businessman's point of view or an entrepreneur point of view, presumably you don't want to share that data. That's your competitive advantage, isn't it?
That's exactly right. I mean, and there needs to be protection around our IP, our data, and it's not about necessarily sharing it with everyone. It's, for us, we could share data with a lot of stakeholders to make their businesses run better, and we're willing to do that, absolutely.
But sorry, Greg, don't you agree, and here I want to clarify this point, don't you agree that there's a difference between raw data and
Yes.
created IP? Because raw data for me should not be a problem for anybody to share it. His IP, being SMEs or being a company, what concerns him, the value he creates from the data is his concern. And this is where I differentiate between where data stored as a raw data compare what value created of the data.
I guess there could be another kind of look at it in terms of kind of macro level data that we are producing that is would be raw data, and what we're actually doing with that data to make our service and our product better for our consumers. And that's kind of, I guess, where you're kind of touching upon, where we could share data, high level macro data for the good of government services, transport services, mobility, businesses, everything. But then actually our sensitive data and what drives our innovation and what drives our product is and should be always ours. So
I mean, I create a scenario for you here to imagine how it helps us. We were speaking earlier about the energy. Imagine I know today from the cars moving to one direction that we have some event happen somewhere. I can automatically understand that I will have more consumption of water, more consumption of electricity, and I can control my grid in that direction. If you reach that level of intelligence in your grid control, you create a lot of efficiency, which you can direct it to somewhere else, or you save cost. Now, this is coming back to the city, coming back to the municipal, where they are caring for how much they consume or how much they generate. So this is where I said something, and this is raw data. I know only that cars moving to that direction.
Yeah,
I think today, I mean, if you think, take Dubai as an example. I mean, Smart Dubai today is starting out open access, right? They've got 43 odd data sets that are on their open data platform, but 3 have been made available. So you can start, let's just say, as an entrepreneur, as a corporate, to start shape a strategy towards how do you then go after a service opportunity in a certain part of the city, because you start to now, I mean, the ones that are available, for example, you understand, the geo of that city. So, for example, the demographic, the age of the people that are in that city, the average spend within that part of the city. How many coffee shops are there, for example, in that city versus how many grocery stores, and you start, as that becomes available, and then obviously deeper level insight of that data. We have, for example, consumer spend data, but at the end of the day, when you bring it all together, you can start to create those really efficient microservices in that city to target a specific need.
It's funny.
And there needs to be a level of access that needs to be granted. So the level of access, I think, is one of those things that probably needs to be looked at when it comes to the public sector with the private sector. How do you arrange various levels of access for this
I find it interesting. We've had quite a detailed conversation on some of the technical and the sort of micro aspects of a smart city, but I'm now confused about what do we mean by a smart city. So you've just described a city that enables businesses or entrepreneurs. Joanna, you described a smart city as about competitive advantage, one city against another. I've heard people talk about a smart city as a sustainable city, so it's about energy conservation. Is it all of the above? What is a smart city?
It's your consumer aspect, right? It's your journey through the city.
Absolutely.
It's those challenges of the different touch points that you go through, and then how do you make that more efficient, and then make the citizen's life a lot more happier. And obviously, that's really what it's all about.
Okay, so citizens' happiness. If I could, we have some questions. Thank you very much for the questions that have been submitted so far. So, Craig, how have you found the digital services provided by government for business setup? So, you started in Dubai, so you're talking about Dubai infrastructure to support you rather than as a general sort of statement. How have you found the experience?
To begin with, it was quite time intense. for me personally, just my personal experience, it took quite a long time to set up a digital business here. We are lucky enough to be part of In5 Innovation Centre, which is a government initiative, or it's a joint initiative between Dubai Internet City and Tcom Group, to help foster the acceleration and incubation of new digital businesses. And there's a lot more of that going on. So you have a lot of accelerator programs, you have a lot of kind of innovation hubs that are really trying to attract people to set up business here, to make, even from getting your trade license, getting your visas, getting your hot desk all set up relatively quickly, so your focus can be on growing your business. I think it's got a lot better. I mean, just speaking from experience, talking to entrepreneurs that maybe are on their third or fourth business here that are quite well known. 10 years ago it was it was a lot longer process and a lot more expensive.
Well, I hear a lot about if you're starting up a business, you spend a lot of time going to different departments to get different permits,
Sure.
and then there's also the cost.
Sure.
So it's time, and an entrepreneur is not somebody who has time.
For me, the focus on a startup, the focus on on any entrepreneurial kind of venture is growth. It shouldn't be, going to government services to get 10 stamps on a document to be able to say, yes, okay, now I have a company. It should be like, right, okay, this is my idea, this is how I go about setting up a company, and now I can go and do it. Rather than, this is a fee, this is a fee, this is a fee, this is, time intensive, I have to go here, I have to go there.
Yeah.
And then all of that just, for example, in 6 months, if your business doesn't work out, to have nothing, it needs to be, there needs to be kind of less friction and less barriers.
So your sense is that we've made progress, particularly compared to those longer serving.
100%. Again, I have friends in kind of the UK and the US, and their setup is a lot more easy and a lot more.
And Johnny, you talked about this being a competitive element for different cities. So Craig's just talking about Dubai there, but you have a more macro view of different cities. How do we compare in the region to Singapore or Berlin or the leading cities?
In terms of setting up a new business, or in
terms
general?
Of attracting investment. Going to your original point about competitive attraction of the smart city.
So let's put it this way. I will answer this question more on an SME perspective,
Okay.
on an entrepreneurial perspective. So I would say that today, if I want to create a company that is going to have an international impact, I would think twice, as of today, setting up that business in the GCC. I would tend to create it in places that give me a global reach extremely quickly, such as Paris, London, etc.
Very quickly.
I would say it has improved dramatically, and actually Dubai managed also to attract some very key startups that are not startups anymore, such as Telegram, as an example. But I would say that there is a lot of room for progress, for improvement, considering the fact that when you set up a business, in Dubai, what are the tools that are given to entrepreneurs today to have an international visibility? So, to give an example, in France, they created a label called La French Tech. La French Tech is a label that you earn. So depending on a certain set of criteria, you earn that label, and that label allows you to participate extremely quickly in your entrepreneurial process, to go abroad, participate to some key exhibitions, and meet some key clients with a very strong support from the government. And this, in the GCC, I've not seen this type of initiatives yet.
So the GCC's made progress in terms of enabling startups locally, but then
Definitely.
supporting them to grow and expand is not so.
Don't forget that in the majority of countries, and if you take the example of the US, Elon Musk's empire would not be the one that it is today without the support of the government. Elon Musk's empire benefited from about $5 billion of grants and financial support. And this is one of the key roles of the government, is to support the entrepreneurs to excel beyond the borders, basically.
Okay, we have another question here. Now I'm going to turn to you, Assem, for this one. So
not difficult one, please.
Well, I'm just reading them. I don't know if it's difficult. I think it touches on what we talked about. So who or what will define being a smart city? Is Dubai a smart city now? And who measures the level of smartness? Does this even matter, actually? I mean, it's...
For sure, and this is why I said it's a journey. It's transformation of a society, and it's a global. It's not Dubai. Really, we ask unfair question if we say is Dubai smart or if A or B or C is smart. This is a transformation. It's a journey of transformation. I believe how we measure it is very simple. I spoke about continuity of workflow. The more I could feel a continuity of my workflow and everything I say or I want to do, then it become more towards the right smart city. Remember one thing, when you judge things, you are always coming from your frame of reference, which called expectations. Always experience has to do with expectations. So example, Greg has expectations today when he go to create some paperwork different from my expectations. His experience and judgment today based on his expectations, mine could be different because I expected to stand 2 hours in a queue, half an hour is a very good one for me. He expected to stand in the queue for 5 minutes and he stopped half an hour, so he sees it very bad. He doesn't, exactly, but this is the issue.
So
yeah, but this is the issue.
Yeah.
Exactly, and this is why I said when we judge cities, remember one thing about Dubai, and this is now to be fair to the city, this city, I'm living there here since 19 years, so I have seen a lot of transformation on the city itself, but also it's a big mix of cultures.
Yeah.
So the difference of people perceptions of a city and how they live and how they merge and emerge into the life and economy is also having its own opportunity equal to challenge. So it has a challenge, but it has an opportunity coming out of there. I believe Dubai on the right steps because there's a quite clear leadership in that we want to do something and there's a passion about that. There is a certain investment, enough or not enough, that's really relevant to topics and sometimes irrelevant to other topics. But if I look where we have been 5 years ago, where we are today, and I look to 5 years ahead, I think Dubai is on the right direction to be a smart city.
Okay, so we have another question actually, which I'm going to steer to you, Carl. But it's from the UAE, and we've talked a lot about Dubai, but this is from another part of the UAE. So regarding connectivity, there are a lot of older and smaller companies in Dubai that may not be as advanced technologically. How would you overcome the challenge of spreading knowledge and getting them to upgrade? So I don't know if you're the right person to come to this question, but I'm putting it to you. So these companies that aren't yet, they've been around for some time, how do we get them to move?
There is this thing where you either leapfrog technology and you move straight to the most advanced. But if you look at the cost factor of entry today, there is probably more cost involved in upgrade mechanisms versus taking on new technology. Now, in terms of...
I mean, the bottom line is it's investment.
It's investment, but I mean, if you think of the types of investments that are required, from a micro service point of view, if you think of the actual small to medium enterprise, the reason why they're operating here in Dubai, maybe not in other markets, is ease of access to that technology. I think funding is very important. So you start to think of how do they get funding? Well, the funding area can come in multiple ways. So there's been an upsurge in terms of accelerators in this market to support startups. But if you think of the older companies who are operating probably in older parts of the city, to be competitive, they need to be online. They don't necessarily need to put a huge amount, I would say, on infrastructure within. It's about how do you get yourself online and how do you get yourself as part of the mobile app / online services opportunity and be competitive in that space. Because if you think of someone like an Amazon and what they've done, and think how they've entered this market, and that the acquisition of Souk.com, that changes the game now. Now it means that you're no longer competing just with your people or the other smaller merchants in your neighborhood. You're in that space where you've got to think about how do I be competitive online, and so the amount of investment required needs to be adopted towards
There is an interesting question there about protectionism potentially. So in this region, say, I know that when I first started at MEED, for example, Saudi Arabia was protecting its cement manufacturers from the big global cement giants, and for understandable reasons. You want to protect local economy and local businesses. So if we've now got Amazon competing with local retailers, is it in the interests of the country to just remove all protection and let Amazon dominate, or is there a role for government to protect? I mean, I don't know if you look at this, Joanna, at all. Or?
I'm not the expert. I can try to answer more or less, but every country in the world, I mean, more or less protects also its own businesses. So I think it's a nice balance to find.
I mean, does protection in this instance mean government providing capital to help businesses, established businesses, upgrade in the entrepreneurs? There's lots of funds emerging. The Ministry of Finance has an innovation fund. But if I'm an established business that isn't quite up to speed online, do I get any support, or just have to go to the bank and borrow?
So nowadays there are a few grants in the UAE that you can tap into. There are a few competitions where you can participate to and earn a check, basically. Now, I think there is an opportunity to, I would say, to standardize a little bit more this type of process, and to have dedicated government grants for very innovative type of businesses. I've not seen this yet. There is a similar grant, I think, in the UAE with the TRA, which is called the ICT Fund, and that would deserve to be most probably bigger and across sectors.
I've heard it said, and I don't know any of you can comment on this, that all of us have to think as a data business now. Everything is a data business, and we just have some other service attached to that. Do you think that makes sense? I mean,
well, I think everybody says that data is a new oil, right?
Currency, right?
I mean, but just to comment on your important point, how we attract here and the competition. Let's use the example Amazon towards local. I believe the role there is very, very simple. You don't need to block anything. You need just to create an attractive environment. And attractive means in everything. It means cost less, more, again, coming continuity of a workflow, guarantee of that stuff, because that will attract people. And I believe consumers will pay premium for a better services. So that none of us is going to the cheapest option always. We go to the place and the services where we believe we are treated better and we get what we want more. So the attractiveness of the infrastructure you offer, the ease of use, coming to what Greg mentioned, and how much easy is it. I believe people can adjust a little bit, but that's the trick which we have to play always, on how much easy and seamless and hassle-less process I have compared to the others, then really I want to provide the cheapest services or to provide the stuff. So quality beats price.
Okay, now we have another question. I will read it first before we decide who answers it. So how can public and private institutions in Dubai and the UAE be encouraged to share their data? So maybe this is one for you, Craig, and even make data publicly available. So how do you make that decision, or does it have to be, you have to be told from the government what you have to share?
No, I mean, to be completely honest, I mean, in terms of what we're doing, we are trying to help drivers. But in turn, what that does is then it also helps traffic management systems. It also helps, grid systems. It also helps the data that we provide and analyze can go to a government entity and say, oh, actually, this is a really busy area today. Why don't you drop the prices in another part of town and try and redirect some traffic flow there? Our data is made for sharing with larger entities, bigger government entities. I think it depends completely on what the company is doing, what they're trying to solve for, and then also the bigger implications. So your other technology startup that's not necessarily involved in mobility and transport, their data might be not relevant for the RTA or anything like that, but it might be, say it's a HR startup, or a recruitment startup, their data might be the Ministry of Labour, to say, oh, actually, this is what the common problems are within business and hiring. let's try and share this data to enhance the way that we process data, the way that we put into place, processes and regulations. So I think in terms of sharing data, it's not necessarily an if, but when. Especially when we kind of full circle back to a fully smart city. We're the ones that are collecting the data for our own use and our own value, but the data at a higher level is very valuable to people that are putting in regulations and legislation and using it at a higher level.
I believe there's two sides to this, or two short answers for this. Number one, there need to be a clear legalization for the data law. So NISA is still expected to come with a clear how you protect the data at the end. At the end, protection doesn't mean blocking, it means only protection, how data flow can happen. The second, how you create a value of the data. That will convince people to say, okay, let's go in a sharing of data. So this is
creating the value comes from the actual service provider.
Exactly.
They have to figure it out for themselves.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But they should know that the data is available. You need raw material, and raw material there is data. So what can I?
Well, that's a good question actually.
Yeah.
So how did you, when you started your business or had your idea for the business, did you know what data was available? Where did you go for the data? How do you begin?
Ours is a very kind of niche business in terms of trying to find data surrounding parking in the Middle East. There's a lot of global studies that we go off. There's a lot of kind of huge companies that are producing a lot of data. But for here, it's a bit more of a struggle. It's a bit more of a educated guess depending on different variables. But I mean, when we started, we didn't think that our business would potentially provide data at a macro level. We wanted to find a parking space. Both founders just wanted to find a parking space for long-term rent. And then it kind of ballooned into this kind of conversation around how important parking data is in the wider scheme of things for businesses, mobility, transport sectors. So I think it kind of evolves as your startup grows and as your idea grows. And then the more people that interact with it, the more customers you get, the more data points you collect, the more you can do with it, and the more it almost to just release itself.
Okay, so basically you started with no data, but
yeah, I mean,
to be honest, because data is sensors, and then come back to technology, and this is what Jenny mentioned before. I mean, the data is sensors, so you need to sensorize everything in reality if you want the real data. Else you are making an assumptions or a guess, and that's where we bring to artificial compared to machine. You need the sensors, and today sensors are not everywhere.
Okay. Now, the obvious corollary of sharing data is about data security, and so we have a question now, and I'll come to you, Carl. So whilst increased connectivity in a city does help to ease workflow, does it not also increase security risks? So identity theft, loss of data. What could the city do, and this means any city, I guess, or any authority, do to protect people living in the city and the city itself?
Well, it begins with trusted partners, right? So it begins with trusted technology partners to look at the critical infrastructure behind the city, which allows you to connect and then obviously have access to data. It begins also with levels of access to data. And I think that, going back to sort of my original point earlier, if you can define levels of access for various entities to gain access to data, I mean, for us, for example, we obviously work very closely with our top tier financial clients, financial institutions, banks, obviously issuers, acquirers, and also our top tier merchants. But we're very heavy centric on protecting our visa net. And it's very much focused.
So you as the, you're enabling payments. So customers will give you some data, presumably their account numbers and transactions.
Yeah.
So you're responsible for securing that data. Who's responsible for securing the platform? Is that if Siemens provide the big data platform in the cloud? Is that your responsibility?
It's a value flow. It's really entire flow. Of course, Siemens will take and now we touched two important points: the cybercrime and cyber protection, because there's a cybercrime should have a clear law penalizing what happens there, and I believe UAE has made this a bit clear now from low prospect. The other one is the cyber protection. So in my case, yes, Siemens, we do our cyber security for the systems and for the data we provide there, and not only for the data in sense of theft of data, but also misuse of data, or the what we call it later on, the viruses and stuff like that, which can be more dangerous than theft of data. Because imagine you are running this, with this data, you are running some important economical factor, and you manufacture medicines and you send a virus, which will make a mix of the chemical composite of the medicine that can turn to a big problem. So there you need to really protect your system and consolidate the entire loop of value flow. And this is what we as technology provider we do. Yes.
Okay. Well, thank you. That brings us somewhat faster than I realised to the end of our discussion. Thank you, all four of you, for your fantastic contributions. This is a conversation clearly that has a long way to run, and for all of you that have registered, you will receive a follow-up email from MEED thanking you for joining us today, but also we will send out our findings report from a recent hackathon that we held with the people on the panel were involved, along with some others. It's developing some recommendations for the digitalisation of cities in this region, and you might find that an interesting piece of information as well for you. So we will send that out to you. Thank you very much for joining us today, but most important, thank you, Carl, Assem, Joanna, and Craig for your time today, and I look forward to seeing you next time on MEED Live. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.
Excellent. Well done. Thank you. This was great.